tell Susan.
Okay.
Because I'm thinking the last time I talked to her, I thought he was kind of grounded from his phone, so I don't know. Anyway, I'll reach out to
Are those
Susan.
the new schedules?
Okay. And I don't
No,
want to
this
miss
is
any
not.
ground.
No, I know, you respect all that and stuff,
I read the
so.
new
Yeah.
I just
schedules.
was like, I don't want it, if he drops you, that maybe
I
because
got the list
I
here.
tell
That's the new one there,
Susan
Jason.
to
Okay.
watch out for you is my point.
Right. And I just.
I-
Do we have a?
Well, yeah, well, they work it out, I don't know how they all work it out. He gets on schedule,
This
that's
evening,
fine,
he's
let's
here.
get it going.
Yeah, Oxley's planning on it.
Basically,
Preaching tonight.
hey, Oxley,
Yes, ma'am.
I had a yard. Did you pay to it to begin with, so I can kind of see how they worked.
I say he did, and some people say he did.
Initially, to get the
I say he did, but some people believe he
shape
did.
for somebody to take care of.
Because you know, I follow that Church of Christ thing on
I can do that. I also have my neighbor.
Facebook, and they said that he never did.
That's my belief,
Kind of
but-
in the neighborhood.
But we don't know
Yeah.
for sure.
So if it doesn't.
So he supplied the booze for the party, they condemned drunkenness.
Yeah, see, that's.
No, he's
Yes,
not
we are.
grounded from
They
work,
did it,
and,
when he,
I know
made
he
wine for
earns
the
money somehow,
wedding.
he has
Why
money,
would
so
he
exactly,
serve
and I know he does
alcohol
lawn
already
stuff,
done?
but otherwise I couldn't tell you.
Okay.
I
And
can't.
Susan thinks he did.
I mean, we're not there.
Yeah,
I've got a girlfriend.
And it don't matter one way or the other.
Sandy was there, but I mean, we.
Yeah.
To do what you're.
I feel like it sometimes.
It's-
By being involved.
Sandy was there, so.
Yeah, sometimes you can know too much.
Exactly.
Sheila, I got your text and appreciate your thoughts.
You're welcome.
All right, I have 9:30. See if anybody's wandering in. All right, we'll start. Sheila, do you think I could give you a job bringing about the possible folding those?
Folding? Okay.
Yeah, I appreciate
I
it.
can handle that.
Thank you. Timothy, good to see you. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. We got to zoom through some of this last week. All right, just as a reminder, since this is our second class of this quarter, we're talking about, really we're focused on evidences for belief in God. And trying to understand why people don't believe in God. And I think a big part of my focus over the next several weeks is eroding a little bit our faith in secular science, because I think Christians get a little bit too scared of it when it seems to conflict with the Bible, but there's no need. Not that scientists aren't smart people, but theories are changing all the time, new discoveries are being made all the time, they're finding out that they were wrong about things. The nice thing about the Bible is it's fixed, and it's always the same, and it seems like anytime somebody questions it, some new information is found to prove it right. The Bible is fixed and firm, but science isn't. So I'm working hard, I think, this quarter to kind of erode some of that faith in science. And so, let's see if I've got this on. I showed some things last week that I found interesting about the new telescope that kind of replaced the Hubble telescope, I guess. the James Webb that's up and finding things. Some neat things, neat discoveries are being made about DNA that are pointing towards God. Some interesting finds in fossils. Turns out that there's still blood and tissue and things that aren't supposed to be there anymore, because how old are these fossils supposed to be? Millions and millions and 100 million years. They're not supposed to still have blood and tissue in them after all that time, but it's being discovered, and it doesn't make sense from an evolutionary standpoint. From a Christian standpoint, it makes perfect sense. But it's challenging some old theories. And I also pointed out that there are a lot of scientists, I would say a movement of scientists who believe in a theory that they call intelligent design, which just means that they're saying God must have made the universe because it's just too perfectly, it's just looks like it was designed and created. It doesn't look like it's here by accident. And there's a lot of resources on the internet if you want to look at some of what they're saying. Okay, and then here's the picture of the blood and the tissue and the fossils. This is a depiction from, I think it was Harvard, one of the Ivy League schools, that created this depiction of what's happening in our cells. There's these little machines that walk around in our cells delivering materials where they need to go somehow, and they think it looks something like that. So it's just crazy what's going on in our cell. It's a whole city of it's a highway in a city of things that are working to make our bodies function. So I think that's awesome. This is the DNA book that I showed you last week, written by a believer who is finding that DNA is pointing towards God and the Bible, because you trace DNA back and kind of looks like what the Bible says is happening. And then I showed you a picture of some of the stuff that's being discovered by this newest telescope. You remember we talked about how in secular science, what they say is if you look, the further out you look in a telescope, what are you seeing? You guys remember?
It's supposed to be the origin of the universe.
Yeah.
Or
So the further out you look, the further back in time you're seeing, because the light that you're looking at from way far away, they say, it took you 13 billion years to get to your telescope. So really you're just seeing something that's 13 billion years old. And 1 second, Sheila's got something to say on this, but these are galaxies that scientists say are 13 billion years old. Like back at the beginning of our 300 million years from the origin of the universe is what they're saying. And these galaxies don't look like what they thought. How do you think that they would believe, or what do you think they would believe about galaxies and stars from the beginning of our universe? That they would look old or young?
look young.
They'd look young. But these are not young galaxies. These are very mature galaxies that should have taken billions and billions of years to create. I'll talk about that more, I think, today. We don't need to be afraid of science. It's awesome. And it so often points towards God and not towards evolution and secularism and like all these new discoveries. I just get excited about it when they come out, because we're probably going to learn something more about God, and it's probably going to erode more and more man's theories because they're wrong about things. All right, we talked about obstacles to belief briefly, so we're going to move on to today. Oops, why did I do that? I don't think I pressed the wrong button. Try this again here. Okay, well, I guess I don't have my slides today. So, I guess you're just going to have to listen. Sorry about that. I know that's torture, unless... All right, bear with me one moment. I'm going to try to be tech savvy. See if I can get this to do what I need it to do. Good morning. Nope, not gonna be able to. All right, so you just have to listen to me today. Hate that for you. All right, where I wanted to start today, as I said, my goal is to erode faith in secular science. And for those just coming in, I just talked about this. I don't mean to say that scientists are stupid or they're trying to be horrible people or anything like that. I just mean to say that sometimes Christians get scared when science seems to conflict with the Bible, and scientists are really smart and they're always right, and so therefore we need to believe everything they say. That's what I'm trying to erode our faith in. Anytime science and the Bible conflicts, we don't need to worry about that. Why? Because science changes all the time. New discoveries are made, and ultimately, if God made this universe, then it's going to be exactly how, there's going to be no conflict between His Word and what's found in science. So, to start with today, I want to talk about this movement of scientists who are believers in God, who there's a name for it called intelligent design theory, or the intelligent design movement, which exists among the scientific community. And it's all these scientists who are, they look at evolution, they look at secular perspectives of science, which says, everything just happened naturally. Everything happened, just by chance. We're here today. And these scientists are going, that doesn't make any sense. This sure, it looks like somebody made it this way, and scientifically, when you see something that looks made, then you have to assume that there's a mind behind it. And the big illustration that these guys use, there's one named Stephen Meyer. Has anybody heard of him? Stephen Meyer. He's probably the biggest proponent of intelligent design, like the scientist who's super smart, went to Cambridge. Like, you listen to him talk, and his IQ is obviously, way up there. But he always uses the illustration of a watch. He says, if you found a watch just sitting on the ground and you picked it up, would you assume that somebody made that watch based on your experience and knowledge, or would you assume that it happened by accident? Mm-hmm. And obviously, everybody's going to say, you would assume somebody made it. And then he says, well, same thing when you look at the universe. When everything looks designed, are you going to assume that it just happened by accident? Or does your knowledge and your wisdom tell you that when you see something that looks made, it probably was made? So that's kind of the basis of his belief. There's a bunch of scientists who, and more, who are adhering to this idea of intelligent design over just humanistic natural chance. And there's some places online, which I had slides for, but I can't show you today because they're not working, that you can go to and read about this. And if you want to write them down, one is called the Discovery Institute. You can go online and read about the Discovery Institute. And if you want these later on, or if you want my slides, you can have them. A lot of information about intelligent design there and all the scientists who believe in that. I can do this. Maybe I don't have my slides, but all right, Jim, but we're about to get some blinking happening. Okay. All right, so that's their webpage. So it's discovery.org. One thing I was going to show is, here's a list of some of the scientists who research and write for this group. And I'm only showing you this just to see that there's a bunch of them who work for this organization. Scientists who believe in God. You can go down the list and see all of them. So there's a bunch here. Okay, so that's Discovery Institute, discovery.org. Here's another one that I really like, and I like their articles and I read them a lot. This is called the Institute for Creation Research, ICR.org. And there's always great articles on here. Just looking at some of the more recent articles they've had. Mega sequences down under support progressive global flood. Okay, so how many have heard of fossil layers? Right? You got the layers on the top, and then underneath that you've got the other layer, and then you have a layer under here, and then you find fossils in each of these layers. And evolutionary theory says the deeper you go, the further back in time you go, and these are the animals at the early on in evolution, and then they progress. Well, these guys, Institute for Creation Research, and their scientists, and then another website that I'll show you called Answers in Genesis that I really like, say, no, that's not what's happening here. It's not what these layers mean. What happened was we had a big, massive global flood a long time ago. And all that water moved a lot of dirt around. And, early on in the flood, you've got this water washing, all this mud over continents. Like, it's so much water, there's just continents of mud flowing. And so the flood was laying down, layer by layer, these huge deposits of dirt and mud. And what else was that mud doing? It was burying animals in it at the same time. And this layer would hit this part of the world, and all these animals would be buried, and this layer would hit this part of the world, and these animals would be buried. And so all those layers got laid down really fast, one on top of the other, within just maybe a couple of years. As floodwaters receded, you're still having more flooding and mud moving around. So mega sequences down under support progressive global flood. That's what that's talking about. Mega sequences are like these big dirt mud slides that are being laid down and called fossil layers. 55 million year old tree frog is still a tree frog. Evolution says that things evolve over time, and frogs are going to turn into something else, and dinosaurs are going to turn into birds, and on and on. But this is something I was going to talk about too. Charles Darwin, when he developed his evolutionary theory, said, I don't have the evidence to support my theory right now. Because all the fossils, they don't really say this, but it's just a theory, and over time I'm going to be proven right as more fossils are being discovered, and it's going to show a progression from this little thing to this big thing over here. And guess what? It didn't happen. It's not looking like what he thought. It's supposed to look like a tree where at the bottom there's not too many animals, and then it kind of branches out to a lot of different kinds of animals. Does that make sense? Okay, and that's not what it looks like. Some people say instead of a tree of life, we should make it more like the lawn of life, because it seems like all the animals just came out at once. There was an event in evolutionary science. There's an event that they call the Cambrian explosion. You ever heard of that before? And what that is scientists say, it looks like all these animals that we know today, they just all got here at once during this. There was this one period of time where all the animals just exploded into existence. Like, we don't know why. Just evolution, wasn't doing anything for a while, and then all of a sudden it just created all these. Like, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't fit Darwin's theory. So, anyway, going back to this 55-million-year-old tree frog is still a tree frog. That's the kind of articles you find on this site, just pointing out that things that evolutionary theory would expect, it's not happening. Okay, so that's a good one. Let me show you a picture of Stephen Meyer. So it's this guy. Does he look familiar to any of you? So maybe you've seen him somewhere. He's kind of leading this intelligent design movement among scientists, and when you see him talking to other people, obviously he's smart. He's not, some guy that doesn't know what he's talking about. He's a scientist. He has his doctorate is in the philosophy of science from Cambridge, so well educated. And let me show you one other website that I like and I go to a lot. It's called AnswersInGenesis.org. And the premise behind this is another group of scientists. They have scientists that they pay to do research and to write papers, and they try to get their papers in the big scientific journals that are out there, and they get a lot of money from Christians to pay these scientists because the research that they're doing, mainstream science probably isn't going to pay them to do it. But the premise behind this website is that everything you read in Genesis is true, literally true. 7 days of creation. The biblical flood happened, something like 4,500 years ago. If you're basing your information on the chronologies, the generations of man that are being given in the book of Genesis, and what these scientists are saying is it's okay to believe that. It doesn't conflict with all the evidence you see out in the world, and how old the world is, and the fossil layers and evolutionary theory. That there's ways that you can make sense of that from a biblical worldview, and they put out some great articles. And this group also are the ones who made the Ark in Kentucky that you can go and visit, the life-size Ark, has anybody been to that? It's really cool because not only did they build a 300 foot long, a little bit longer than that, structure, but they also, the Ark was 450 feet or something like that. Not only did they build a big boat, so you could see how big it was, but also they tried to imagine how Noah and his family made it functional enough so that they could feed all the animals and water them and take care of themselves on it for a year. They must have been pretty innovative to make all that work. Make sure that they had food and they could go to the bathroom, and they could have sleeping quarters, and how they'd fit all the animals on there, and all those interesting questions. They tried to imagine them. and build something that maybe was plausible. So it's pretty cool. So that's these people behind that. Okay, so let me just stop and see if there are any questions coming up for people as we're going through this information. And Sheila, maybe you can remember your question from 10 minutes ago.
I was just gonna say, when I was a little girl, I, was inundated, of course, with the evolution type stuff. And it was only millions of years old. And in my 76 years, it's become billions of years old. And
The older you get, the older the world gets.
I was introduced to answers in Genesis right before Tricia was born. And they solidified my belief that it's
Oh,
seven.
okay.
It's,
It's young.
It's a young earth.
Yeah.
And so, yes, to all of that you've introduced this morning.
Yeah, I'm convinced it's a young Earth too. Even, it looks old. Again, like there's just so many things that happen where it doesn't fit with what humanistic evolutionary theory thought, that I got no problem believing that, they're just wrong about the dating methods. The whole dating system is a flawed system. Again, not that anybody's trying to fool anybody. I'm not suggesting that there's this big conspiracy, but when you have scientists who are sure that there's no God, then of course they're going to be biased. But when you're dating something and you believe this has got to be 2 billion years old, and then you date it and you find information in that dating in your research that shows it's less than 50,000 years old, but then some other information in there says it's 2 billion. What are you going to do with that information that opposes what you thought originally? You're going to explain it away in some kind of way. Okay, there must have been some contamination in this sample that we collected, or yet some younger material got into this sample that we collected somehow. That happens. But I'm just saying that it's not as cut and dry as, clearly this is 2 billion years old because of our radiometric dating that we did. Like, it is not that clear. Jim, and then Oxley, and then Timothy.
The problem with all of this, taking their rules, it came from something. You can't get something from nothing. That's what they're saying. Well, where did that come from? And at the end, somebody had to create it, make it,
Yeah.
had to produce it somehow, by their laws.
Yeah.
And the answer in Genesis.
Let me talk about that for a minute, Jim. So, you've all heard of the Big Bang Theory
Yeah.
by this point, and I grew up being taught the Big Bang Theory. What I didn't know is before. Do you know what scientists believed before the Big Bang Theory? Are any of you old enough to know that? Because the Big Bang Theory was from Einstein's day, from the 40s, 1940s or so. What they believed before that? They believed that the universe was just eternal, that matter has always been. That's it. And then Einstein messed everything up because he developed his theory of relativity, and all of his equations said the universe must be expanding. That's what the Big Bang says, that everything started, a little tiny speck, and then it blew up, and it's been expanding ever since. So his theory said the universe must be expanding, and he did not like that at all. As a matter of fact, he thought, okay, I've got a mistake in here, because the universe can't be expanding, because what does it mean if it's expanding? That once upon a time, it was real small, or actually what he would say is, if it's expanding, that means the universe had a beginning. And no scientists wanted to believe it had a beginning, because that's what Christians say, and they didn't like that. So Einstein said, no, I don't believe that. fix this over time. And then a guy named Edwin Hubble, the guy who developed the Hubble telescope, called him up and said, "Hey, come here, I want to show you something." So he went down to California, and Hubble showed him something in the telescope, and Einstein said, "All right, it's expanding." I can't get around that. But the Big Bang was a victory for Christians, actually, because we all said the universe had a beginning. And then we could go, ha ha, science. See, science, you're wrong about that. Scientists don't like the Big Bang because it implies that it came from a beginning, and that something from nothing, they had to now deal with that. Oxley?
When I was in high school, the landing on the moon in '69, before that event even took place, years and years, there were so many think tanks. What's going to happen of this and that? So they thought it out pretty good, and one conclusion was, well, there's always been cosmic dust, and cosmic dust has been since the beginning or forever.
Right.
And over time, the moon itself is going to collect so much dust.
Yeah.
It's going to be 12 or 15 feet high. Because when I was in high school, the universe was only 4 billion years old. It's getting older as time goes by.
Yeah.
And so they said, well, at the module, when it does land on the moon, it's going to probably sink into the dust. But when it finally did land, there was only half an inch. And they had to scrap that whole theory right there,
Right.
because they just disproved themselves wrong. They've got great intentions, but they're flawed.
Yes.
This was about 35 years ago. There in California, they found dinosaur tracks with human tracks. Some even the dinosaurs stepping over the human tracks. So that proved that it seems like they existed at one time. So as they were going to go out, some scientists, they were going to go out to validate that, other scientists had beat them to it, and they were taking sledgehammers, destroying the evidence because it messed up their theory. So they do have good intentions, but sometimes there is a conspiracy within the community itself, because they've got to, they bound and determined that this is the way it is, and whatever else comes along, it's got to be wrong. Not us, but you. So see, there's conflict right there. So it just does not make sense.
There's those tracks that you're talking about, at least one place in the world is down in Texas, and maybe somebody can tell me exactly where that is. I forget. Do you remember, Sheila?
No, but I've been there.
Okay, so there's an old ancient riverbed where some of these dinosaur tracks are being discovered down in Texas. I forget. You guys can look it up.
It's northern central.
North
It's
Central.
close to
Okay.
where Gary's brother lives.
Okay.
We were visiting him, we visited the museum and saw the tracks in Apostle.
And there are tracks going along with the dinosaur tracks that appear to be human. But as you said, Oxley, those are rejected because it doesn't fit the theory. And so if it doesn't fit the theory, then, if you can make them be anything but human, you're going to try to do that. And that's what's going on, so far as I understand. Like, they may have tried to, hammer them all out, but they haven't been able to, and so there's still some out there. But scientists are saying, that's probably not human. Yeah, it looks like it, but it must be something else.
Like you said, though, there are some honest scientists out there. And the thing is, if you're going to use science, you got to use it the right way. But sometimes you're going to hit a brick wall. That's going to happen. Back in '75, I read an article in the New York Times. I read the Times Magazine, and archaeological finding in Palestine. They found a genealogy record, and it had Abraham begot Isaac, Isaac begot Jacob, and it went down the line. But that's as far as they had. It wasn't complete. There's only about 20 or 30 names, and the scientists back then said, "Well, it's not that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the Bible, because back then there was a lot of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacobs that chronologically followed each other." So you're going to have dishonesty in there.
If you can find that, I'd love to see that, Oxley. Timothy and...
So you started out talking about telescopes being able to see farther down
Yeah,
scientists reckoning that those galaxies far away are billions of years old.
Yes.
The scripture talks about God stretched out the heavens.
yeah,
So when you look out into space and you see what they call redshift,
yes,
which is what they're using to try to determine the age of those galaxies, is they're looking at it backwards. They need to start with God and then reason, but they try to reason without considering God's existence and his action and his power.
yeah.
So
Appreciate that.
He stretched out the heavens, and so God created redshift.
Yeah, so Timothy's talking about redshift, and let me just say what that is for a second. I've got a picture of it here. Okay, so you look at those are galaxies that are being discovered by this new telescope. What color do they look? They look red. Why do they look red? Well, scientists have an answer to that. Because
Somebody came up with the idea that if we identify the color,
I think that was Hubble.
was it?
This is what convinced Einstein that, I'm pretty sure this is what convinced Einstein that the universe is expanding because things are red. What makes things red? Well, color is just waves of light, right? And you know, some waves are like that, some waves are like that. And the farther
If it travels farther, it changes color.
Yeah.
And the farther it goes to red.
So if something is moving away from you, it's going to be a different color because like the waves they're going to kind of be stretched out because they're moving away from you, and they're going to look red.
That's why the police cars have red lights, so you can see them from a distance.
You know, I was going to say, if you have a police car that drives past you and it sounds a certain way when it's coming towards you, and it sounds a different way when it's going away from you, it's the same thing. It's these waves that your ear is
It's called the
interpreting.
Doppler effect.
What is it?
Doppler effect.
The Doppler?
It changes tones.
Doppler, yeah.
It appears to change tones.
Yeah, so light does the same thing. Remember your question?
My family is a huge paleontology nerd, so we're into all this stuff. So I don't know, have you read into the Younger Dryas event?
Yes, but remind me.
Well, for years it was just, you know, the flood that made the Grand Canyon, blah, blah, blah. Well, they're starting to connect more and more scientific data that says it happened much more recently than they originally expected, and now they've decided it's somewhere between 3,000 and 10,000 years.
Wow.
And it was
I didn't know
far
that.
more widespread than just our continent. And, you know, it's one of those growing theories, and I'm not sure, but I think Meyer might be one of the scientists that's talking a lot about it.
Yeah, you would be.
But we have perfect evidence of it just north of us in the Morrison Formation, which is, you know.
That looks young, you mean?
Well, the event itself.
Yeah.
And I think it's Younger Dryas's name's not young as an age. But the Morrison Formation, Dinosaur National Monument, that's north, like straight north of us on the border of Colorado and Utah. It stretches all the way to Wyoming, Denver. It's a huge formation.
Yeah.
And it essentially
Formation,
looks-
and let me just clarify, formation means
rock formation.
water launched all this mud and dirt over thousands of square miles.
Yes, exactly. And up at the Dinosaur National Monument, you can just see these striated layers
Yes.
that are exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And it is just a huge rock face full of different colors of rock,
Yes.
different colors.
Clearly
Of
layers
fossils.
laid down.
There's dinosaur bones everywhere.
Yeah.
And they're starting to also shift what they're talking about, that the striated layers are, you know, the different densities of sand and rock and such are going to sink at different rates
Oh,
in the
I didn't
water.
know that one.
So as it's slamming that water into this riverbank or, you know, Great Flood, whatever, whatever the scientist who's talking about it decides.
They were to put
happened.
down one at a time.
Yeah,
Or-
it's not like a wave of mud after a wave of mud. It's a huge wave of mud, and the heaviest
And then
sinks
it's,
first.
huh.
And that's what causes the fossilization of those layers. That's why there's so much preservation, because it takes very specific
Yeah,
environmental details to actually fossilize something of that size.
Hmm.
So it actually points more towards a great flood situation than
yeah,
decades and decades and 65 million years. They're still claiming 65 million years, but it's like the more they research and dig into it, the more young it gets.
yeah. Before we get to Ron, just continuing on that thought, how does something become a fossil? Like it dies, like you've all seen animals die, and then their carcass, sits there, maybe other animals that come and eat it and stuff. How does that become a fossil? It doesn't. The only way something becomes a fossil is it has to get buried fast enough so that animals can't eat it and take its bones away and stuff. And so how does something get buried fast enough to become a fossil? Well, one great way that could happen is a global flood, burying tons and tons of things all at once, and that they all dying and hardening, and that, like, creation scientists have that on evolutionists. We're like, we can make sense of this, a flood and lots of dirt buried it. Evolutionists are like, well, it probably happened slowly over time, and then, like, no, that can't. Ron and Matt, and then come back.
I was just gonna follow up what she said. Dinosaur National Monument in Utah, Vernal. They have a wall of bones is what they call it. If you get a chance, you ought to go see it, because it's
I want
exactly
to.
what you're talking about. It's stacked up on each other. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, I'd love to see that.
I still have my flyers.
What's that?
I still have my flyers from it. You can see the
For that?
back of the
Oh,
picture.
I'd love to see that. Matthew?
I missed last week, did you do a definition of science and a definition of eternal?
Of eternal, did you say?
Definition of the eternal and a definition of science.
Yeah, I haven't. That would be a good idea. And I'm not sure that I've solidified my definition of science. We might need to ask our teacher here to define that. But I'm careful not to just say science, because I'm not criticizing science. I'm saying, humanistic evolutionary theory. I think that's more accurate what I'm trying to erode faith in than science. Although I don't really like the type of science that science uses. I don't think is complete, because, like scientists say, in order for something to be science, Sheila, you can help me with this, but in order for something to be science, it has to be observable, reproducible, and you have to
Quantifiable. It has to be
quantifiable, measurable. You have to develop experiments that, what is it called? Where you try to disprove, whatever your theory is.
Experiment,
So-
comes out with the same conclusion every time.
Yeah, but like science does not include so many other ways that you can gather information. But anyway, I think that's a good idea, Matt, to do that. Did you have another?
I was just
thought?
gonna nerd out on how fossils are made, but I don't. It's
I love that stuff too, and I appreciate it.
Have you ever been to Dinosaur, City Dinosaur, where they got
Not yet, but I want
thousands
to.
and thousands of bones in an area small, about the half size of this room right here. They're just layer upon layer dinosaur bones right there, all right? And the thing is, carbon dating method is not foolproof. They have found things
Absolutely.
that are not millions of years old, but carbon dating says it is. And
Yeah.
it's just such a contradiction in itself.
That's what a lot of these creation scientists are saying. That you date it, but anytime the date does not fit what you thought, you're going to dismiss it, or it's just not as clear cut as it's made out to be. I didn't get a chance to go to. It's called, what is it called? The Trail Through Time, I think. just on the other side of Fruta at exit 2. Is it,
Journey through time.
what is it?
Journey through time.
Journey through time. And that's pretty awesome. Like, you can see the fossils in the rocks, and there's signs that tell you what you're looking at, and so all that stuff is so cool.
And that's probably wrong.
Timothy, yeah, I'm sorry, you had your hand up, and I knew I missed somebody.
I forgot what it was.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, the signs probably are wrong, but it's just awesome to see it in there. Go ahead.
I visited Mesa Verde once, and was with some other people on a tour, and the tour guide, he mentioned, you know, we were looking at the buildings set back in the cliff there. And
Oh, those are
he said,
awesome.
We don't know why they left, they're just gone.
Yeah.
Well, I know why.
Why?
Because there used to be a big lake there,
Really?
and it went away.
I didn't know
The dam
that.
broke, and it
Oh.
ran off.
Okay.
There's several cases of that in the southwest part of the country.
Yeah.
And I don't know, that's, if there's no water, you can't live there. You just can't do it.
Yeah.
They didn't dig wells back then.
I had a slide of Psalm 19:1 that says, "The heavens declare the glory of God, the firmament his handiwork." A lot of Christians, I think, are scared to get into science and evolutionary theory and all of that because we're worried that the heavens are going to declare that there is no God. But that's just not true. And I hope that you're seeing and hearing all these brethren who love this stuff. They love science, and it's exciting, and they're finding things that declare the glory of God, not declare evolution or any of that. It's just so awesome and wonderful, and looking at this stuff should increase your faith in God. And so that's what I'm trying to do in this class. I'll share with you one other thing as we're closing. When I was a teenager and I was trying to decide, is there a God or not, and doing all kinds of research and trying to figure out the answer to this question, what I finally figured out is the world looks designed. Like, I mean, how could any of this have come about by accident? It couldn't have. And there's this guy, John Clayton, who, I don't know if you've heard of John Clayton or not, but he writes articles, and his articles, or his website's called Dandy Designs, and he wrote a book about it too. He goes through examples in nature and animals of all these things that are just so perfectly designed. One of them, I'll share this with you and we'll close, is the woodpecker. Like the woodpecker, I'm like, there's no way that could have evolved, because everything about the woodpecker is just perfect for what it does. First of all, it's got, woodpeckers have 4 toes, and not all birds do, and it's got toes on the bottom, so, because woodpeckers got to sit on the side of a tree in order to grab it and peck at it, and its toes are just perfect for grabbing that tree. Not any bird can grab the side of a tree and start pecking at it. And then, any other animal doing what a woodpecker does would give itself brain damage. Well, why doesn't a woodpecker get brain damage? Well, because its cranium is encased in like this spongy material that protects it. Why? How did that just, evolution happens blindly. Did it just, it just was lucky that it got the spongy material so it didn't give itself brain damage? And then of course its beak is perfect for pecking. Like what if a duck evolved the desire to peck a tree? That wouldn't have done it much good. It just broke its beak. And then a woodpecker's got this tongue that's so long it wraps around its head somehow, so that when it pecks a hole in a tree, it can stick it way in there and get the bugs that it wants to eat. So everything about a woodpecker is just perfect for what it does. And there's so many examples of that where you start digging into it and you think, wow, like this world is amazing. There's no way this just happened. And so we'll continue on this line of thought next week. But
My brother used to correspond with John Clayton.
okay. Well, I bet he got some interesting
Oh, he did.
info from it. That's cool. We can talk about that later. Let's take about a 10-minute break and we'll begin our worship.
I told them they could bring one thing. for birthday stuff. And then I turn around and Edie's got her purse and it's like busting at the seams.
They know how to get around it.
I know, they're be sly. It's Edie's birthday today, so.
Oh, how sweet. How old now?
6. So she's getting on a little bit more. What are you
How are you?
doing today? We have been so chaotic. We have just got back from the camping trip. And I was like, oh, let's go to the zoo. So we just got back from Denver and taking the kids to the zoo yesterday. And then tomorrow, or this afternoon, is Libby's best friend's birthday party.
Good to meet you. Good to meet you.
Her dad threw his party on
Good to have you with us.
Edie's birthday.
Thank you.
So we're gonna do all that stuff and then wait till Dad gets back into town.
Are you dad?
Go to the
That's right.
trampoline place. But the girls would never-
Hey, you got a ride home, you said? Awesome. All right. Thank you. And I'll see you when I get home.
About 10 degrees cooler there than it was here, but it's still 90.
They said she did.
She was just like zipping through sheets.
There's a lot of shade.
The trees are so much better than they were last time I was there, when I was like 19.
I'm Jason.
Well, the last time we went,
Yes.
was, they used to do Denver
Bill
lights
Clayton.
at Christmas
Nice to meet you.
time.
Oh, hey.
And we went to Denver, so that's when
I don't, they started out. So they did it so
You know, I don't know, because that's was obviously before COVID.
There's like the kids do every summer.